Picture this: you're at a family brunch, the kind where the table's groaning under plates of pancakes and passive-aggressive jabs. Your mom, mid-sip of her mimosa, leans over with a smirk and says, "You're lucky we even include you," goes a long way. Ouch. That line stings like lemon juice in a paper cut, doesn't it? It's the kind of moment that makes you question your place in the family, your worth, and whether you should have just stayed home with Netflix. This story dives into that gut punch of a moment, unraveling the messy, human tangle of family dynamics, love, resentment, and the search for belonging. Stick with me as we follow Alex, our protagonist, through a brunch that starts with a barb and ends with a reckoning. Alex slouched in the creaky wooden chair at the corner of the brunch table, the kind of spot you get when you're late to a family gathering and nobody saves you a good seat. The restaurant, a trendy little place called the Sunny Yoke, was all exposed brick and Edison bulbs, the kind of spot that charged $18 for avocado toast and called it artisan. Alex's family was already deep into their second round of mimosas, their laughter bouncing off the walls like a sitcom laugh track. Mom, Dad, Aunt Karen, Uncle Pete, and Alex's older sister, Lauren, were all there. Their faces lit up with that forced cheer you only see at obligatory family meets. Alex, though, felt like an extra in their movie, the one nobody remembers the name of. That line from Mom, "You're lucky we even include oopity goes a long way," was still ringing in their ears, delivered with that half-laughing tone that made it impossible to call out without sounding oversensitive. Alex stared at the menu, the words blurring as they tried to figure out if Mom meant it or if it was just her usual teasing. The table was a minefield of these moments, where love and cruelty danced so close you couldn't tell them apart. Alex's fork traced circles in the condensation on their water glass, their mind replaying every family gathering where they'd felt like the odd one out, the kid who didn't quite fit the family's glossy Instagram aesthetic. Lauren was the golden child, with her law degree and her perfect fiancé, while Alex was still figuring things out, which apparently translated to disappointing everyone. The clink of glasses and the hum of conversation around them felt like a spotlight on their inadequacy. They wondered if anyone else at the table even noticed the sting of Mom's words, or if they were too busy passing the hollandaise sauce to care. Alex's phone buzzed in their poquita texts from their best friend, Jamie, asking how brunch was going. Like swallowing glass, Alex thought, but didn't type it. Instead, they shoved the phone back in their jeans and tried to focus on the menu, hoping the Eggs Benedict might drown out the ache in their chest. The server, a guy with a man bun and a practiced smile, swooped in to take orders, and Alex mumbled something about pancakes, barely audible over Aunt Karen's story about her new Peloton. The table moved on, but Alex was stuck, replaying Mom's smirk, the way her eyes glinted like she'd scored a point. It wasn't just the words, it was the weight of them, the way they confirmed every doubt Alex had about their place in this family. They glanced at Dad, who was scrolling through his phone, probably checking stocks, and wondered if he'd even heard. Probably not, he never did. The brunch was supposed to be a celebration. Loren's engagement party was next month, and this was the pregame, as Uncle Pete called it, but to Alex, it felt like a trial, and they were already losing. The smell of bacon and coffee filled the air, but it couldn't cover the bitterness settling in their stomach. They wanted to leave, to bolt out the door and never look back. But something kept them glued to the chair. Maybe hope, maybe habit, maybe just the fear of proving Mom right. The pancakes arrived, a towering stack dripping with syrup and topped with a perfect pat of butter, but Alex could barely taste them. Every bite felt like chewing cardboard, their appetite smothered by the memory of Mom's comment. The table was a whirlwind of chatter, Lauren gushing about her wedding venue, a vineyard with rustic charm, while Aunt Karen nodded like she was personally responsible for the choice. Alex's eyes darted around, searching for an ally, but nobody met their gaze. Uncle Pete was too busy cracking dad jokes about the cost of open bars, and Dad was still glued to his phone, probably calculating how much this brunch was setting him back. Alex's mind wandered back to childhood, to the times when family gatherings weren't this fraught, or at least, they hadn't noticed. Back then, Mom's barbs were softer, disguised as tough love, like when she'd tell Alex to stop daydreaming during piano lessons or try harder at soccer. But now, at 27, those little digs had piled up into something heavier, something that felt like truth. Alex wasn't the lawyer, the overachiever, the one who made the family look good. They were the artist, the one who'd dropped out of college to find themselves, only to end up waiting tables and sketching in a cramped apartment. Mom's words weren't new, but they cut deeper now, maybe because Alex was starting to believe them. They glanced at Lauren, her hair perfectly blown out, her laughter bright and easy, and felt a pang of envy not for her life, but for the way she seemed to belong so effortlessly. Alex's sketchbook was tucked in their bag under the table, a habit they couldn't break, even at brunch. They wanted to pull it out, to lose themselves in lines and shapes. But they knew Mom would roll her eyes and say something about wasting time. The server refilled their water, and Alex caught his eye for a split second, wondering if he could see the storm brewing inside them. Probably not. He was too busy dodging Aunt Karen's request for just a splash more mimosa. Alex's phone buzzed again, and other texts from Jamie. "You okay?" They wanted to spill everything, to tell Jamie how Mom's words had cracked something open, but they didn't. Instead, they typed back a quick "fine" and shoved the phone away. The table erupted in laughter at something Uncle Pete said, and Alex forced a smile, hoping it looked real. They wondered if this was just how families worked: love, wrapped in sharp edges, acceptance doled out with conditions. Maybe they were lucky to be included, like Mom said. Maybe pity was the only thing keeping them here. The thought made their chests tighten, and they pushed the pancakes around their plates, trying to focus on the clatter of forks and the hum of the restaurant instead of the voice in their head, whispering that they didn't belong. Halfway through brunch, the conversation shifted to Lauren's wedding plans, and Alex felt like they were fading into the background, a ghost at their own family's table. Mom was in her element, tossing out ideas for centerpieces and gushing about how Lauren's always been so decisive. Alex wanted to roll their eyes but didn't, knowing it would only earn them another smirk or, worse, a lecture later. They picked at their pancakes, the syrup now congealing into a sticky mess, and tried to tune out the wedding talk. It wasn't that they weren't happy for Lauren. She was their sister. After all, but every mention of her perfect life felt like a mirror held up to Alex's own failures. They thought about the sketch they'd started last night, a charcoal drawing of a figure standing at the edge of a cliff, half in shadow. It wasn't finished, but it felt like them teetering, unsure, caught between falling and stepping back. They wondered if anyone at this table would ever care about their art, or if it would always be that hobby Mom dismissed. Aunt Karen was now quizzing Lauren about guest lists, and Alex caught a fleeting glance from Dad, who raised an eyebrow like he'd just remembered they were there. "You okay, kid?" he asked, his voice low. But before Alex could answer, Mom cut in with a laugh. "Oh, Alex is fine. They're just observing." Right, that smirk again, like she knew something Alex didn't. They wanted to snap back, to ask what she meant, but the words stuck in their throat. Instead, they nodded, their face hot, and took a sip of water to hide the tremble in their hands. The restaurant was getting louder now, other tables filled with families and friends, their voices blending into a cheerful hum that made Alex feel even more isolated. They thought about Jamie, who'd always said family was just the people who'd show up for you, not the ones you're stuck with by blood. Maybe Jamie was right. Maybe Alex didn't need this table, this brunch, this constant feeling of being weighed and found wanting. But leaving wasn't that simple, not when you'd spent your whole life trying to prove you deserved a seat. They glanced at their bag, the sketchbook calling to them like a lifeline, and made a decision. They'd stay through brunch, but they wouldn't let Mom's words define them. Not today, at least. They straightened in their chair, forcing themselves to look present, even if they didn't feel it. The server swung by again, asking if anyone needed anything, and Alex almost said, "Yeah, a new family," but they just shook their head and smiled. As the brunch dragged on, Mom started telling a story about Lauren's high school valedictorian speech, her voice dripping with pride. Alex felt their stomach twist, not because they begrudged Lauren her moment, but because they knew what was coming next. Sure enough, Mom's eyes flicked to Alex, and she added, "Of course, not everyone's cut out for that kind of thing." It was subtle, the kind of jab that could pass as a joke to anyone who wasn't paying attention, but Alex felt it like a punch. They wanted to scream, to ask why Mom always had to compare them, but they bit their lip and stared at their plate. Instead, the pancakes were cold now, the butter a sad, melted puddle. Uncle Pete, oblivious, launched into a story about his golf game, and the table laughed on cue, but Alex was barely listening. They were thinking about the last time they'd tried to share something with Mom, a sketch they'd spent weeks on, a portrait of her from memory. She'd glanced at it, said, "That's nice, honey," and handed it back like it was a kid's finger painting. The memory burned, not because of the dismissal, but because Alex had hoped for more. They always did. Now, at this brunch, with Mom's words still hanging in the air, Alex felt that hope flicker out. They looked around the table, at the faces of their family, and wondered when they'd stopped feeling like home. Lauren was scrolling through her phone now, showing Aunt Karen photos of wedding dresses, and Alex caught a glimpse of her screen. Perfect, poised, everything Alex wasn't. They thought about their own life. The late nights at the restaurant, the sketchbook filled with half-finished dreams, the apartment with its leaky faucet and peeling paint. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. Maybe that was enough. They pulled out their phone and texted Jamie, "Brunch is a disaster. Can we hang later?" Jamie's reply came fast. "Always. You're more than enough." Alex smiled, a small, private thing, and tucked the phone away. They didn't need Mom's approval. Not really. But the ache was still there, sharp and stubborn. The server cleared plates, and Alex handed over their barely touched pancakes, feeling a strange relief in letting them go. They didn't belong here, not in the way Lauren did, but maybe that was okay. Maybe belonging wasn't about fitting someone else's mold. They glanced at Mom, who was now debating linen colors with Lauren, and felt a flicker of defiance. They'd keep showing up, keep being themselves, even if it made Mom smirk. Because pity or not, Alex wasn't here for her, they were here for themselves. The brunch was winding down now, the table littered with empty plates and half-drunk coffee cups. Aunt Karen was tipsy, her laugh louder than it needed to be, and Uncle Pete was arguing with the server about splitting the bill. Alex sat quietly, their hands folded in their lap, watching the chaos like it was a play they weren't part of. Mom's comments still lingered, a bruise that wouldn't stop throbbing, but Alex was starting to see it for what it was, not truth, but habit. Mom had always been like this, quick to praise Lauren, and quicker to point out Alex's flaws. Like they were a project she hadn't quite finished. Alex thought about the years they'd spent trying to win her over, to be the kid she could brag about. They'd tried college, tried the stable job at the bank, tried being the person Mom wanted, but it never stuck. They weren't Lauren, and they weren't sorry for it. Not anymore. They pulled their sketchbook out of their bag, just to hold it, the weight of it grounding them. The pages were filled with pieces of their world portraits, landscapes, moments caught in ink and charcoal. It wasn't a law degree or a corner office, but it was real. They glanced at Dad, who'd finally put his phone down, and was watching them with a look Alex couldn't quite read. "You good?" he asked again, and this time, Alex nodded. "Yeah," they said, and meant it. They weren't good in the way he probably wanted, but they were getting there. The server dropped off the bill, and Mom made a show of pulling out her credit card, sighing like it was a favor to everyone. Alex didn't care. They were already thinking about later, about meeting Jamie at the coffee shop, about the sketch they'd start when they got home. They thought about the cliff drawing, the figure standing at the edge, and decided they'd finish it not with the figure falling, but stepping forward into something new. The table started to clear out, Lauren hugging everyone, Mom fussing over her purse, and Alex stood, slinging their bag over their shoulder. They didn't say much, just a quiet "see you" to the table, but inside, they were making a promise to themselves. No more chasing pity, no more begging for a seat. They'd make their own table, one where they belonged without question. Outside the sunny yoke, the air was crisp, the kind of early fall day that made you want to walk forever. Alex stepped onto the sidewalk, their breath visible in the cool morning, and felt lighter than they had all brunch. The family was still inside, lingering over goodbyes, but Alex didn't wait. They needed space, air, a moment to be themselves without the weight of Mom's words or Lauren's shine. They pulled out their phone and texted Jamie, "Meet me at the usual spot." The reply was instant, "On my way." Alex smiled and started walking, their sketchbook bouncing in their bag with every step. The city was alive around them, cars humming, people rushing, a street musician playing something soft on a guitar. Alex felt like they were waking up, like the brunch had been a bad dream they could shake off. Mom's voice still echoed, "Pity goes a long way," but it was quieter now, drowned out by the noise of the world and the small, stubborn part of Alex that refused to believe it. They thought about the last time they'd seen Jamie, how they'd spent hours at the coffee shop, sketching and laughing. No judgment, no expectations. That was what family could be, wasn't it? Not the people who hurt you just because they could, but the ones who saw you, really saw you, and stayed. Alex stopped at a crosswalk, watching a kid chase a pigeon across the street, and felt a spark of inspiration. They'd draw that later, the kid, the pigeon, the blur of motion against the gray city. It wouldn't be perfect, but it would be theirs. They thought about Mom, about the way she'd always pushed them to be someone else, and realized something. Her words weren't about Alex. They were about her own fears, her own need to control the story. Alex didn't have to play along anymore. They kept walking, the coffee shop just a few blocks away, and felt the weight of the brunch lift, piece by piece. They weren't lucky to be included, they were enough, just as they were. And if Mom couldn't see that, it was her loss, not Alex's. At the coffee shop, Jamie was already there, sprawled in a corner booth with a latte and a dog-eared paperback. "You survived," they said, grinning, as Alex slid into the seat across from them. "Barely," Alex replied, but they were smiling too, the first real smile of the day. They ordered a black coffee, strong enough to jolt them back to life, and pulled out their sketchbook. Jamie didn't ask about brunch, didn't push, just leaned over to peek at the blank page. "What's next?" they asked, and Alex felt something loosen in their chest. They started talking about the cliff drawing, about the kid and the pigeon, about the way Mom's words had hurt but hadn't broken them. Jamie listened, nodding, laughing at the right moments, and Alex felt seen in a way they hadn't at that brunch table. They started sketching, the pencil moving fast, lines forming the shape of a figure, not falling, not teetering, but standing tall. The coffee shop hummed around them, the clink of cups and the murmur of voices, a soft backdrop to their world. Alex thought about the family they'd left behind at the Sunny Yoke, about Mom's smirk and Lauren's glow and Dad's distracted glances. They'd go back. Eventually family was family, after all, but not as the kid begging for a seat. They'd go back as themselves, with their art and their heart and their own kind of shine. Jamie reached over, stealing a sip of Alex's coffee, and they laughed, the sound bright and real. The sketch was taking shape now, the figures' face clearer, their eyes looking forward, not down. Alex didn't know what came next, not for the drawing, not for them, but for the first time all day, they felt like they could figure it out. They weren't lucky to be included, they were enough. And that was more than enough to keep going.